This is a Plague Tale Requiem. We're here on Xbox Series X taking a look at the new 60 FPS mode. Be sure to like the video, subscribing is great as well. So when the game first launched, we had like a high quality 30 FPS mode, probably the default way that most people experienced what this game had to offer. There was also, if you have 120 hertz kind of enabled screen, you could do a 40 FPS mode, and that one allowed you to have a better frame rate, but you know, at the sort of weird 40 FPS mark, which actually isn't all that bad if you do have that option, but it is something that I think few people have available to them, since you know those TVs are not fully available to everyone quite yet, or not everyone is upgraded to that point, right? So now we have a 60 FPS mode. So in the settings, you go to graphics, and it should just be available there. Favorite performance. We can't really swap back and forth because you have to like restart everything in order to do that. It gives you that note. But yeah, it's targeting 60 FPS at a lower resolution, which looks to be 1080p. And yeah, it is actually, at least from what I've seen, pretty buttery smooth, even if you get into those points where there are a lot of rats running around trying to munch you and eat you alive. And as before, HDR support, spatial sound, Dolby Atmos support, and DTS:X support as well for different audio options. So this game is really, really good. You know, obviously I did a full, you know, kind of review of it and everything like that when it launched, streamed the whole thing. So it is nice to kind of have an excuse to come back here, because I really genuinely did not expect to have a reason to play the game again, if that makes sense. I really didn't anticipate that I would be back into this one. Now, with that, I do feel that the game has had significant sort of cutbacks in order to achieve the frame rate. Like, just the foliage level, the visual fidelity is dropped quite a bit, in my opinion. And I did pick this area out specifically because it is one of the larger segments of the game in terms of like freedom and open space for you to kind of move through. So I thought this was a good area to kind of, you know, present things. I still think the game looks really visually quite good. You know what I mean? Like, this is one of those games that I think really does sort of showcase some of the potential for what current gen gaming really should be. But yeah, the price of having that higher frame rate here is definitely something that's present. And you know, I will say, I do quite like the option of having, you know, the 40 FPS choice. I think that one's a pretty good one, like especially if you're not kind of familiar with that option. It does allow you to have that higher fidelity and still have a bit of a higher level of fluidity to it. And it does actually kind of work out pretty nicely. But yeah, it is nice to finally have the 60 FPS for those that, like, you know, want this sort of mode. You know, it is nice to have that actually present and available. And for those that, you know, kind of don't care as much for this narrative-driven experience, you can dive in and you can do the 30 FPS mode, have it look really, really visually awesome. But yeah, I think it's still, you know, it still looks really good. It still retains that original style design, but it is kind of like a lot of the qualities of the world that make this game feel so current gen are kind of lost in the process. It's a little disappointing that it's not the best of both worlds, but hey, a surprise 60 FPS update is obviously appreciated. It's great to see that, because I was not anticipating this, because they just kind of, from what I understand, they just kind of dropped it, and I was like, oh, okay, well that is kind of out of the blue, but appreciated all the same. Especially with a game that's like, you know, been out for so long, you kind of sit there and be like, oh, okay, so we kind of got what we kind of got. So yeah, it's sort of nice, and it just really helps for those scenes where it's like there's a whole bunch of like crazy, creepy critters just charging you, or the combat and stuff. But you know, well, it is pretty combat focused. You know, this one is a bit more like exploration, narrative, cinematic, stuff like that. It's not necessarily all about, you know, the hordes and hordes of rats coming after you, or combat, or fighting. Aren't we supposed to shoot something through here? There we go.
Mind the drop.
But I will say, for the lower fidelity, it still looks a lot better than similar titles that have this lower visual quality. I will say this game does hide it pretty well, which is a nice, pleasant surprise. So this is just like a bit of kind of puzzle solving before you go and actually fight some stuff in that. I also don't think it's necessarily too spoilerish, which is nice.
Let's get going.
Yeah. But you can see here for just like cinematics and that, it is toned down quite a bit. I think some of the bigger areas too that you notice things is in regards to like the hair quality. Like it does look a lot... Like I noticed that tends to be one of the bigger things for resolution downgrades, is just like the rendering of the hair just seems to be, you know, really, really present and sort of like sticks out in awkward ways.
Appealing.
I don't think the Count and Countess dug into the Order's writings. They must have considered the place too sacred.
There is only one way to find out.
We've got to go down there and kill a bunch of people with rats.
Let's move.
But yeah, no, seriously, from what I've seen fluidity-wise, it's just been nailing it, which is great. There might be a slight moment where it like kind of loads. I think you might have seen that earlier, where you might get like a half-second sort of thing that pops up, but that's kind of a loading thing and doesn't seem to be really too present. But yeah, you can really see like the trees and the flora and stuff like that. When they go to lower resolutions, those tend to mesh together a bit more. But not a bad way to play this if you've been waiting for that sort of high, you know, handling, everything like that. And it is a beautiful game. Seriously, if you've not played this game yet, for whatever reason you've been waiting for this frame rate update, now is the time to dive in. This is an excellent game, an incredible achievement in like the technology and the, you know, the gameplay and the storytelling, and it's a great sequel to Plague Tale Innocence. It's telling this really lovely story of Amicia here looking after her younger brother, and Hugo, and Amicia's getting, you know, tougher in that and becoming more bold, and yeah, they do a really good job sort of evolving the characters in some interesting ways. I definitely did quite like that. And it's a mix of like stealth with combat, and you visit these beautiful vistas and locations. It's really, really quite nice. It's a very, very well put together game. I think you can have a really, really good time playing it. Obviously, I do have like a full, you know, kind of video review that does kind of dive into it in an even deeper sort of way, you know, from like storytelling, but this is a lot more focused on just kind of giving you like a little bit of, you know, here's sort of how it's running, here's sort of how it's looking kind of update just for the frame rate, because that is, you know, the major point to this is just that quality improvement. But this is also a lot of the game too, if you're wondering, is kind of walking around together, taking in the scenes. That's why I'm saying it's kind of like, you might feel as it's a bit of a negative if you are just dropping down, you know, the resolution this much, and just like, you're not really getting the same sense of scope as you would be doing, you know, 40 FPS or the 30 FPS modes. And I'm glad that the different options exist though. That's the coolest part, I think, of like really the current gen gaming, is the fact that we have so many options. Oh yeah, those waves look like really kind of a low resolution on this one. That is for sure.
That building on the left.
But it's still like, it's still majestic.
Yes, perfect. Let's keep following the coastline.
Amicia, there's blood.
Of course there's blood. People are dying.
What?
Oh no!
We have to go back.
No, we need to get to that chapel.
Amicia, we've got a
We need
dead
to go
man.
there and deal with the
We'll be
bad
careful
men that
when
exist
we
in this
need to.
place.
Let's
It's
go.
you and me, Hugo, and this random lady that's with us on this intensive mission for whatever reason. But yeah, like I said, I do suggest checking out my full review for thoughts on the game, but this was just to give you a slice of life of the higher frame rate that's in play.